Welcome back, people, to another social studies mini lesson. In the last lesson, we learned about the end of the Industrial Revolution and the technology of the early 1900s. And some of those technological advances had to do with war, specifically World War I. So, normally, when we're in class and we start talking about World War I, like I said, I don't go into a lot of detail on the battles, but I entitled this lesson, Who's Your BFF? Because friendships got a lot of countries in World War I that wouldn't have normally been there had they not had friends who were in the battle. So normally in class, I would give everyone the name of a country that was involved, and we'd go through and we'd figure out who they were friends with and who they didn't like and which side they ended up on, and it was really kind of cool. Of course, we can't do that, so I have entrusted my handy-dandy sidekicks here to help me with this lesson. So here goes nothing. From the 1800s on, a lot of these countries in Europe is, that's your picture of Europe. Europe is like on the other side of the globe practically, so I don't expect you to memorize this map. Just know there's a bunch of different countries in Europe, and they were fighting against each other. So, in the 1800s and early 1900s, a lot of these countries were making treaties. They were basically making friends with these other countries, saying, yeah, if anything happens, you go to war against somebody, we've got your back here. We can work with you. We'll be on your side. So you've got a lot of these different treaties between different countries that come into play here. In fact, somebody took the time to make a graph of what countries were friends with who. This is what it looks like, people. Seriously, all these people, they had treaties with these other people, and what it boils down to is there were only two countries that really were in the fight. Everybody else was just friends with them and piled in. Think of it like this. Two people get into a fist fight at school. Don't try this. But all their buddies come and back them up, and pretty soon you have a mob going in this fight. It's not just two people fighting. It's like 20. That was World War I. So here we go. I'm going to walk you through how the war started. So we're going to start with Serbia. I'm going low tech here. Can you tell? Serbia was a little bitty country that wanted to be independent. And Serbia didn't like a big country called Austria-Hungary. Today it's Austria and Hungary, two different countries. Back then, one big empire, and they were threatening to take over Serbia. Serbia didn't like that. So here's what they did. One day, the prince, the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, the guy who was going to be king someday, well, a Serbian shot him and killed him and his wife. It was at that point that Austria-Hungary said,
"Oh, no, you didn't."
So, Serbia is on one side. Here you go, hold Serbia. Austria-Hungary is on the other, and they're getting ready to fight. They're trying to figure out a reason to fight. But they got to get some things in order first. Okay, hold that. Hold Austria-Hungary. Okay. Serbia realized they just poked the bully, and they needed some help, big help, like in the form of Russia. Russia was their buddy. They had an alliance with Russia, a treaty. And so they went to Russia and said, we need your help. Come back us up here. And Russia says, sure, we'll be glad to help you. Now, wait a second. That's not all. France was Russia's friend. And the French minister was with the Russians on the night that this decision was made. And the French were just like, we didn't really want to get involved in this, but we said we'd have Russia's back, and so now we've got Serbia's back too, and oh my goodness, now we've got three people in this fight. Okay? There you go. All right. Austria-Hungary realizes it also needs some big guns here. They needed some help, especially because Russia's getting involved now. So they go to Germany. Germany is one of their allies, and Germany says,
I got your back.
so now Austria-Hungary and Germany, two of the bigger countries in Europe at the time, they're buddied up against Russia, France, and Serbia. Hold that. Now, at this point, the Ottoman Empire, which is another big empire in that area of the world, joins in for no other reason than because
I hate Russia. I hate Russia.
They hated Russia. They had lost a war to Russia and lost a bunch of land to them, and they saw Russia was in this fight, and they're like, oh yeah, count us in. So you got 3 there. Here you go. All right, so we got 3 on that side. Now then, Germany decides they need access to the Atlantic, so they go march through a country called Belgium, a little bitty country that's right next to them, between them and the ocean. Well, the problem was Britain had an alliance with Belgium, so when Germany tried to take over Belgium, Britain had no choice but to stick up for them and side with France and Russia.
What?
If Germany hadn't marched through Belgium, guess what? They wouldn't have had a dog in this fight. They wouldn't have been involved at all. Okay, so now we're getting down to the really interesting ones. Bulgaria, not Belgium, Bulgaria. It's another little country near Serbia, and they were kind of going back and forth. We don't want to get in the war, but the people on this side are trying to entice us to join them. And the people on this side are trying to entice us to join them. They need the railroad tracks through to get supplies through. And then Germany comes in quietly and says, hey, psst, listen up. You work with us on this, we'll give you a nice, sweet piece of land that will like double the size of your kingdom. Okay, more land is good. So they joined Germany over there. All right, hold them up. Hold them up. Okay, now here's the kicker. Italy. Italy started out with Germany. They had an alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary. So technically they should have joined in with these guys. But after about a year of fighting, Italy comes in and says, yeah, even though we're technically on these people's side, we're switching sides because y'all are losing. So Italy jumps in over here. This is why on some maps you'll see Italy counted over here with the Central Powers, and sometimes you'll see them over here with the Allies. They switch sides, those dirty, rotten, two-timing Italians. All right, we got somebody else who's just aching to get into a fight. Japan. Japan is half a world away from Europe. So what's their deal?
Japan.
Exactly. They were a little bitty country that up until just before this really didn't have any outside contact. And the Germans had been getting different colonies in Asia and taking up land and parking their boats in land that belonged to, or in ocean water that belonged to Japan and China, which was then taken over by Japan. Japan wanted power. They wanted to be recognized as a power. And they got involved for no other reason than because they didn't like Germany. They went to the Germans and said, you got until this time to move your boats out of our water. The Germans said, no. Japan says, fine, we'll fight for it. So that was 1914, 15, and 16. It was not until 1917 that the U.S. became involved. The Germans sank one too many of our ships. And, of course, we were still friends with Britain. And, yeah, it's getting a lot, yeah. We were still friends with Britain and everything, and we'd been supplying them with, ammunition and stuff. But we actually declared war in 1917. And the U.S. the U.S. joined in 1917 and went to Europe to help them win the war. So here you have the Allies. Hold them up. Hold up. We need some help holding these up. The Allies. And you have the Central Powers. All right. That's a lot of countries involved. When at the beginning, it really should have only been this country and this country. So you see why we say choose your friends wisely. They might get you into fights you never wanted to be in. All right, so there you go. There is your World War I. Woo! Pick your country lesson. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about these countries and how they got into a lot of trouble. We will go on in our next lesson and we're going to talk about something past World War I. World War I ended on November 11th, 1918 at the 11th hour. The peace treaty was signed. That's why Veterans Day is celebrated on November 11th every year. All right, you've got some information. Hopefully you've had some fun with this. I know my two helpers have enjoyed it, and I will see you in our next video, hopefully with enough hands.